Hello, everyone. It is November 14th, 2018, and this is Unfound Live on Facebook. And as I stated last week, we'll be moving this to YouTube at the beginning of 2019, and we'll see how that works out. First person in tonight is Shelly. Shelly, what's going on? And I know that the line's going to be backed up here. Everybody tuning in. Cheryl and Lois, what's going on? Got a lot to talk about. I think I say that every week that I have a lot to talk about, but this week I got a lot to talk about. So much stuff going on out there, and I want to make sure that I can cover a lot of it. I think last week I didn't cover it all, and I kind of felt a little guilty. Carrie and Pamela and Cherie and Dee Dee. Dee Dee, glad you can make it on time tonight. That's spectacular. Cindy and Susie and Janet. What's going on, Janet? And Nicole. See if we can get any guys in here. Pamela, Angel. Am I the only guy here? Is that right? I shouldn't be surprised. Maybe all of you don't realize this, but I do have the ability to check my analytics for like the Facebook page and the downloads and everything else. And I think that Unfound is very much like most other true crime programs, that the audience is 80% female, and a large majority of those women are between 30 and 55 years old. I don't know if I've ever talked about that before, but that is the case. Becky, and hey, there's a guy right there. Paul, what's going on? Glad to see you. Penny and Carrie and Kate, a lot of people in here tonight. Awesome. And Adrian, I haven't noticed your name before, so I'm going to guess you're maybe new. Adrian, Radrienne. Is that true? Are you new? I think you are. And I think Paul's new too. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I've chosen to get in on a action-packed program, a lot of information tonight. And Joyce, how are you doing, Joyce? We haven't talked in a while, Joyce. I hope you're doing good. Hello, right back at you. Where do I want to start? Maybe I should just say this again. I brought this up last week. Beginning in 2019, the first Wednesday, I guess, of 2019, Unfound. This show that you see that you're watching right now will be moving over to YouTube, onto the Unfound YouTube channel. And maybe you know a little bit about that because I've been posting some things there. I've been posting some of the old episodes there with pictures. And also I posted the Brandy Wells video, which is something I've been meaning to do for a long time. And then a listener reminded me of it. And I was like, oh, yeah, I got to do that. I stopped everything that I was doing and went and did that. I think some of you have found that interesting. So starting in January, this is going to YouTube. Carrie says, because us girls are just nosy enough to love a mystery. I think that's true, the reason the demographics are like that, Carrie. I really think. And there's another guy, Tim. Great. We're getting some testosterone in here. Spectacular. And Angela and Heather, great to see everybody. So I want to talk about that. I actually got to talk to Detective Kenneth Maines today. Can't really get into everything that we talked about, but I'm going to maybe try to work on something together in the near future. Maybe he'll be appearing on an upcoming episode. I don't maybe think before the end of the year, but surely in 2019 I can see him making another appearance on Unfound regarding maybe some cases that he's covered and he's working on. And maybe we'll be working on some other things today. But we talked about it for a half hour. As you know, really, really good guy. And you should also know he wrote the foreword to Volume 5, which is eventually going to come out when I finish it. But he wrote the foreword to Volume 5 of the Unfound book series. So I got to talk to him today, which was good. The Jansen Brewer, Daniel Braden poll, and we're going to be talking about that episode here in a little bit. But the poll that was posted in the group, if everybody doesn't know, that the number one choice in the poll was that you all happened to believe that Daniel did something to Jansen and then took off. This is one of those instances where I'm not sure I agree with that. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit. But that was the results of the poll. That choice pretty much outdistanced the other ones, the other choices I think I put up there, that they both happened to them and they both ran off. Well, Daniel did something to Jansen and then took up was the most popular choice. Claudia and Kelly and Susie, what's going on? Hi, right back at you, Susie. Well, let's talk about that. As some of you know, I posted a messenger conversation that I had with Scotty Hughes, who was mentioned quite prominently in the Brewer-Braden episode. Scotty is the guy who claims that night, that Friday to Saturday, that Daniel and Jansen were over at his place, and then they left. And, of course, they have allegedly never been seen again. Well, what happened exactly, the entire story, and this is going to take a little while to tell, is that he tried to be admitted into the group. And my policy with people who are in the Unfound podcast discussion group, which is a private group, is that is reserved for listeners and guests. And he was the first person that I'm going to say that we, kind of looked a little curiously at in an episode. Let's just put it that way when regards to Scotty. If you've listened to the episode, you know. To my recollection, he's the first of that type of person who wanted to be permitted into the group, and I declined him. And I wrote him and I told him why. I told him, though, if he'd like to have a conversation with me about what his recollection is of that time back when Daniel and Jansen disappeared, I'd be happy to talk to him on Messenger so the conversation could be recorded, and then I would post that in the group so everybody could see, so they could hear his side of it. And that's what I did. And I'm hoping to have some more conversations with him, but at this point, I'm not going to be permitting him into the group. But I am going to talk to him, and he's going to get a fair shake from me, and any conversations I have with him will be passed on to all of you. They are not going to be private, and he knows that. They're not going to be private, because I think the public needs to know everything that he knows. So the way he describes it is this. Now, you can choose to believe some of this or not. And once again, this is going to take a little time to explain, so bear with me. Adrian says, fairly new to joining the live show, started listening because of the Thomas Brown case. Adrian, thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate it. And Christina, what's up? And Jennifer, too. So Scotty is, I found out, around my age. He's maybe a couple years older than I am. And we know that Daniel was in his 40s. Jansen was in his 20s, a lot younger than Daniel was. Scotty claims, and Scotty has been in and out of jail, to no surprise. And he claims that he has been a guy who has helped fugitives on the run over the years. And the way that he and Daniel met was somebody called him and he would not give the person's name. And this is all detailed in that conversation, but I know that was a little hard to read. The formatting was a little weird in the file that I posted, so I'm just going to go through the highlights of it. Cheryl, what's going on? So he claims that the Monday before Daniel and Jansen disappeared, he got a call from someone. And he was told to go somewhere, and Daniel Braden was there with his stuff. And Daniel introduced himself as Sean. And Scotty claims that he never met Daniel before that point, and he never knew Daniel's real name until after. So Daniel stayed at his house that week, and then one of those days, Jansen went over to Scotty's, and that's how Daniel and Jansen met. All right? So what Daniel, or what Scotty claims, is he allegedly didn't know anything about the fishing. And I want you to also know that I've talked to Laura at least a couple times this week to go over all of this with her. And I sent that copy of the conversation to her, as you would expect me to do that. He claims that what happened was that night, that Friday night, Jansen and Daniel came to his place. Chris was not with them. And Jansen was driving Scotty's truck. They come over there. Then about a quarter after 2 in the morning, which would be Saturday morning, that night, Saturday morning, they left. And what the plan was, what Scotty says, is that Daniel and Scotty left, and the idea was that Jansen was going to drop off Daniel with some other person who was going to get Daniel out of town, to help him more on his way to get out of the area, because Daniel does have warrants out for his arrest. This is what Scotty says. And Jansen was supposed to take him to do that. The way Scotty says that was supposed to go is that Jansen was going to drop off Daniel, who we still didn't know his name. Then Jansen, see all these names. Jansen was going to then go get Chris. Remember Chris from the story. And then Chris and Jansen were going to get drugs. And then they were going to be coming back to Scotty's. All right. Now, of course, Jansen never came back. And Daniel has allegedly never been seen since then. And then Daniel allegedly never got passed off to the next person who was going to help him, be on the run. This is Scotty talking. Scotty's belief was that Jansen and Chris Jansen was going to pick up Chris, and after they got these drugs, they were going to be coming right back. Of course, they never did. And Scotty says that he tried to call Jansen that Saturday, nothing, but he did get some texts from him, but he never got any phone calls. He never did hear Jansen's voice. But allegedly, what Scotty heard was that on Saturday night, Jansen made a call to the mother of his child, and he was crying and everything else. Well, if you'll remember this, Laura told us that call happened on Thursday night. Scotty is saying that's on Saturday night. All right? So I don't know what to think there. And so he was trying to call him, and then he finds out that they're missing, and so there's that. Well, Scotty, what he ended up doing is he ended up talking. Jansen has another brother named John, and he has a wife named Kayla, and if you'll remember, Laura talked about them in the episode. Laura does not get along with them very well. And this is something that did not come out in the episode. There is allegedly a videotape. There's allegedly a videotape of Jansen going somewhere by himself and then meeting up with, parking his truck at some place called the Iron City Market. The video is there. He gets out of his truck, out of essentially Scotty's truck, and he gets into a truck. There's some guy driving, and Chris is there as well. Jansen gets in this truck with these two other guys. One of them is Chris, and then Jansen is never seen again. Later, allegedly, the truck comes back. Chris gets out, gets into Scotty's truck, drives it away. Jansen is never seen again. All right, this is Scotty's story. But Scotty has never seen this video. He was told about this video from someone else. Well, I was told about the video from somebody independent of Scotty. I'm not going to tell you who that is. Well, unfortunately, these two people's stories don't match up. Because Scotty is trying to tell me that video is from Sunday morning, not Saturday morning, not after Jansen left Scotty's with Daniel. He's saying it's the next morning, like 24 hours later. Whereas this other person is claiming that it's Saturday morning, so this would have been filmed right after or sometime that night that Jansen and Daniel were at Scotty's. Try to keep this all straight. Okay? So there is some sort of disagreement there. Now, the weird thing is, Laura has never heard about this tape. Never. I've talked to her about it. So I don't know what to believe. I don't know if this tape exists or not. Somebody is claiming that it exists. I've never seen it. We know how we hear about these tapes that exist. And it's always weird to me that if the police are actually looking for somebody, they usually put a tape like this out, but the police department there hasn't. And the mother of the person who is missing doesn't even know about it, even though somebody else is saying that they told her. She has no recollection of that conversation ever taking place. So a lot has been going on since the Friday episode, but this is why Unfound exists. This is why it exists. We're meant to stir things up. We want to get information out there, and of course, a disappearance like Jansen and Daniels, which isn't that well known, this is exactly what that kind of disappearance needs. And once again, with that videotape, Daniel is not seen on that videotape, so I don't know what to think. I don't know. But there are discrepancies in all this, and then Scotty claims that he didn't find out about Daniel's real name until later. Okay? So, Christina's asking, I forgot, what year did this take place? This took place just a couple years ago, Christina, August of 2016. Carrie, who has Jansen's cell phone records? I'm not sure about that, but in that file, you will see that Scotty put in pictures of texts he allegedly got from Jansen, saying how Jansen said he was going to be coming right back. All right? And allegedly, he got a text from Jansen on Sunday. So 2 days after we're talked about in the episode, allegedly, he got a text from Jansen 2 days later in the afternoon. So this would have been well after he was seen on this videotape, if this videotape even exists. But he never does mention dropping Daniel off. He doesn't mention Daniel at all. And Daniel kind of just vanishes into thin air. So that's about all I can say about that. You're free once again to read that file for yourself. I know it's a little hard to understand because, you know, with messenger conversations, you'll ask some questions and then the person will answer one of them, then you answer, you know, it's not as staggered as I would like, but it's better than nothing. And I realize that when you put it as a doc file, it's like blue backgrounds or red backgrounds. I did what I could with it. I know for some of you, it kind of worked out. For some of you, it didn't. I apologize about that. But I thought you deserved to see the conversation for yourself. Yeah, Cheryl says, I think Mom would remember if someone says there's video. Cheryl, I'm inclined to say that as well. Carrie says, if nothing else, it really makes people really nervous. Someone will slip up. This is how nuclears pop up. Carrie, you're exactly right. Christina, what's going on? Kelly said, okay. Kelly says, I had my AFC on yesterday. Michelle says, stir it up. Agree with you, Carrie. That is generally what will happen sooner or later, and we do hope sooner. So I just don't know what to think. I have to tell you that I'm going to continue to talk to Scotty. I'm going to continue to treat him with respect. This other person who contacted me, I want to continue to talk to this person too to try to figure out what's all going on here. But someone's lying. All right, someone is amongst these people that have contacted me since Friday. All right, and I want you to know that I didn't guarantee privacy for any of them. Unlike my guests and people who appear on the program that I know I can trust, for people who just contact me and said, well, I want to tell my side of the story and I got something to add and everything, I generally do not give them privacy. It goes straight to Laura, and then if I think that it's something relevant to a case that I can talk about, I'm going to talk about it with all of you. All right? To see what you think of it. Because you're a group. I'm just one guy. Got one brain. We got thousands and thousands of brains out there in the unfound world that can analyze these things, and you can judge it for yourself. Now, of course, Laura is going to be looking into this videotape to find out if somebody has it. Did the police see it? Did they actually see it? Whatever else. Hopefully they say, oh, yeah, we got this. You didn't know about it? And they're able to show her. Hopefully it's in evidence somewhere. And if she gets to see it, I'm hoping that she allows me to see it. And if I get to see it, all of you are going to get to see it. Okay, and I think Laura will go along with that, you know, if we can get it from the police or whatever. But it's just weird to me that some other people know about the videotape and have seen it, allegedly, and Laura doesn't know about it. Of course, if you can't know about something, you can't see something. So that was the crux, that was the general idea of Scotty's conversation with me. It took place of over about an hour. Of course, he's claiming he had nothing to do with it. He's claiming that Jansen did owe money to people and was nervous about that. And that's something that we did talk about during the episode. If you look Scotty up, and I posted something in the group, he's a career criminal. All right. And in fact, he was in jail from, not long after Jansen and Daniel disappeared until this year for drinking and driving and hitting two people. All right. So, and he did admit to me, if you'll look at the sheet, that he did admit that he, did have a thing for Jansen, liked him very much, knew him for a while, liked him and everything, but it was never, I don't think, sexual, because that's not what Jansen was into. So he owned up to that. But he is a career criminal, a felon. So I just don't know. I'll continue to talk to him. I don't think anything I'm saying here would surprise him if he's watching or finds out about it. So there you go. I'll try to keep it cordial and everything as I can. But I never guaranteed him any privacy. But if he wants to continue talking about what he thinks and everything, then I'm going to continue to talk to him. I will, of course, field any conversations. I'll listen to any conversations that any of these people who are around Jansen at the time want to talk to me. Chris wants to come and, talk to me. You're not coming to my place. I'm not going to talk to these people face to face. But if he wants to talk to me over the phone, over Messenger, then we can make those things happen. Emily says usually, hey, Emily, what's going on? Usually there's a little bit of truth in every lie. Yep. Carrie says, I think she needs to get her hands on his phone records too, if that's possible. Christina says, 2016 seems like an average person wouldn't remember times and dates or even comings and goings unless something very unusual happened at that time. Very well could be, Christina. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. But you all wanted to know about it, and so I was going to talk about it. So there you go. Dorothy says he did seem to care about Jansen, whereas the verbiage Chris used about going to Florida to find Jansen made Chris look like a habitual liar. What's interesting about the conversation that popped out to me that with Scotty is that, Daniel, he allegedly only knew Daniel for a few days. But somehow Scotty knew that Daniel had an ex-wife in Florida. But the thing is, that's not even true. And in fact, somebody who knows Daniel, who read the conversation, got back to me and says that's not true. What Scotty said there is not true. So there's that. I just don't know. So there you go. I don't want to make this all about that particular conversation. You can read it. If I can try to format it a little different, I did the best I could trying to make the text black instead of white with the background. If I can make it any better than that, I'll try to. But I think that's about as good as it's going to get. But I appreciate anybody who downloaded it, read it. I hope you think that I try to ask them good questions, tough questions, even though I realize that the conversation is a little difficult to follow. So there's that. So Pamela, thanks for asking about that. I was on my agenda to talk about. Thank you for leading me into that. Some other things that you can look forward to. I'm going to be actually doing some practice presentations. I reserved a room over at the library here in Madeira Beach. I'm going to be over there filming myself, pretending like I'm doing a presentation to a class about podcast and media and things in the 21st century. I'm also going to be doing a practice presentation about missing persons cases as if I were talking to a bunch of criminal justice students. I'm going to probably put some clips of that up on the YouTube channel within a couple weeks. I hope you'll find that interesting. I'm going to be using these videos as samples to send to some people. So maybe I can get some speaking engagements, mainly at universities and colleges in 2019. I'd really like to make that happen in 2019. And to do that, I have to kind of put an outline together. Of course, I'm good at outlines for my interviews, but for any kind of speaking things, people want to see you, dressed up, speaking about what you're going to, they don't necessarily need to see the entire presentation, but maybe 3 minutes, just to get an idea that you know what you're talking about and you're not going to get stage fright in that. So that's what I'm going to be working on, and you'll see that up on the YouTube channel in a couple weeks. Cherie says, that's not odd to me. These people live so many hours in one day. If you're up for 24 hours, what else are you going to talk about? Cherie, you may be right. Kimberly, what's going on tonight? Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Rachel and Ashley as well. Dorothy, what's going on? So just to start this out, we talked a little about Ken Maines, talked about Scotty Hughes, talked about YouTube, talked about filming myself for a presentation, and talked about the Brewer Braden poll. Let's take a question before I get into anything else. And I just want to, where is this? Sue asked a spectacular question. I think she's in here tonight too. It's just amazing to me, the insightfulness of this question. She asked, why do I always mention Charlie Project? I do, before I do a summary of the case, I usually mention the Charlie Project, and I always say, and now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good site, charlieproject.org. Well, Sue asked me, why do I always say that? And does Megan Good, who runs Charlie Project, sponsor the show? Is she a sponsor? First of all, Charlie Project and Megan are not sponsors of the program. Okay, I would never take $1 from my good friend Megan. Okay, I would never take $1 from her, ever. Okay, firstly, and she's been on the program. Of course, I've interviewed her, and that's how we got to, it's hard to believe we've known each other for almost 2 years now. That's amazing. But you know how highly I think of her and what she does and how she's been doing it for a long time. I have a lot of respect for her. But the reason I do that is because I want everybody out there that listens to Unfound to know that I'm not a plagiarist. Okay? And what I mean by that is, and Meg and I have not recently, but back in the day, frankly, her website gets ripped off a lot. There are other podcasts that will go there, take her information, for some of the descriptions are kind of short, not a lot of information, and some of the other information is very long. Some other podcasts will go to her site, take the pictures, take all the information, just almost do it word for word, never give her credit. Okay, that happens, and she'll tell you that happens. In fact, that's why for a long time you couldn't copy text off of her site if you wanted to. You couldn't do that because people were just blatantly just copying the material into a doc file and just making their own program out of it, using her material, never giving her credit. Okay? Well, as you know, we don't plagiarize on Unfound. We get all of our information from the source. Okay, that's what we do. That's why I have those people on the program. That's why I have families on. That's why I have bloggers on who do their, and I'm very picky about my bloggers. Dennis Mahan, Anthony from Crime Blogger, 1983, of course, very recently, Heather Grotman. These are people who don't plagiarize either. They go out, they go to old news articles, They tell people where they've gotten their pictures, where they've gotten their information. That's what good writers, reporters, bloggers do, podcasters. Okay? Now, the reason I choose to mention her name right at that point is because many times when I put my summary of the case together, I use information from her site just to keep it nice and concise and everything else. There's no need to reinvent the wheel at that point. Okay? There's no reason for me to come up with my own words, but I know if I'm going to do that, I'm going to give whoever that is credit. So that's why I always say, now sometimes I don't. Why? Because that case isn't on our website. Like Daniel Braden's and Joshua Brewer's, not on Charlie Project. So that is a summary I wrote myself. But for anything that is on, any case that is on her site, and that I may use some of her, a little bit of description here or there just to work on my own, she gets credit, and that's how I do it. Okay? I'm not sure listeners of podcasts realize how many other programs just completely rip off Wikipedia and blogger sites like Anthony's, like Dennis's, like Heather's. I think there's even a podcast out there now that's kind of ripping me off. What are you going to do? And you'll notice I never mention any names, but it's true. And I think some people have even emailed me, do you know that this other podcast? I said, I've heard about it. But we don't, I don't rip anybody off. I go right to the source and you get to hear the source. That's what I think good reporting is about. I write the introductions myself. I come up with the themes myself. In the summary, if I used Megan's site, and that would be the only site that I ever use, I give her credit. I write the news myself. Of course, I conduct the interviews myself. I write out the outlines, and of course, the source. All I'm doing is answering the questions. And then the summary at the end, that's what I do myself off the top of my head as well. It's all original. And if I have to copy somebody, they get credit. So, Sue, that's why I mention Charlie Project. It's not because she's a sponsor. And once again, I would never take a dime from Megan Good, ever. But it's because I do use her website on occasion. I'm happy to use it. She knows that I use it. I think it's good advertising for her. It helps me out, just get the, because I'm working on a little bit of a time frame. You probably even notice that if you listen to episodes. Usually the intro is like 30 seconds, and then the theme part at the beginning of the part after the music starts at like the 1 minute mark, and then it goes to about the 2:30 mark, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And then the summary is around 2 minutes long, and it ends at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And then, of course, the news and the other things come after that. It's almost like that every single episode, just the way I do it. And to do that, sometimes I use Megan's site for, keeping it very concise, because she keeps her descriptions very concise. Now, I don't use every word, but it just gives me an idea how to condense it down into something that's very easy to understand. And I feel like if I'm going to do that, I need to give Megan credit. And that's how I do it. Cheryl says, Charlie Project and Doe Network is where I started my search for my sister years ago. Okay, Cheryl, of course. Linda K. Carroll. Cheryl is Linda K. Carroll's sister. Christina says, it took me a few episodes to get used to listening to interviews with the missing persons families, but now I love it so much better than hearing secondhand info. Thank you. I agree. And one of the reasons I do it that way is because if I was just a listener, that's what I'd want too. I want to hear from the people who experienced it. Cherie Biggs, what's going on? The intros are awesome. Thanks. Jennifer, hi. What's going on? Christina, the accents too. Yeah, we had Laura this past Friday had a great accent. Loved it, from Tennessee. Carrie, responsible reporters do their own work. Right. Thank you. Keep your eyes on your own work, as our teacher said back in high school. Keep your eyes on your own work. And that's one of the reasons I think that I really don't know what's going on so many other programs, is because I just don't pay attention. The only reason I even know about what they're doing is because some listeners, hey, do you know that they're doing this? Did you hear about that? Do you know that this other podcast seems to be doing, cases that you're doing. I had no idea. I really don't. And in fact, I know somebody today asked me, what other podcast do I listen to? What could I recommend? I said, I don't really listen to any others, just too busy. So it's not because I'm a snob or anything, but when I'm not doing true crime work on Unfound or talking to people on the phone or books and other things, I listen to sports talk radio out of Pittsburgh. That's what I do. I'm a Pirates fan. I'm a Steelers fan, not a hockey fan. And then I may watch on YouTube, I may watch Doug DeMuro's channel, which is a car program, because he, reviews some interesting cars and new cars and things. I like the channel Beyond the Trailer. The young woman who does that program, I think, does a really, really good job about movies and trailers and reviewing movies and everything. I watch that. I like to watch anything about World War II, documentaries, and I like to watch like James Bond. I have the whole James Bond movie collection on DVD, and I like to play those while I'm doing work. That's what I do. I love this work. Of course, Unfound takes up most of my time, and I love it. But when just take a break or whatever else, I'll just put some other thing, it takes me in other directions. So there you go. So there's that. So Sue, I should say Sue, I hope that answered your question. I don't know if you're in here or not. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. But I hope that answered your question. It's a fantastic question. I do it so often, I don't even think about it. Then a listener's like, why do you do that? And I was like, oh, that's a fantastic question. Okay. Cheryl says, shows, go for LOL. Well, Cheryl, yeah, I guess, yeah, that is interesting, Cheryl. Okay. One more thing that I need to talk about is Patreon. You just might as well get used to it right now. From now to the end of the year, I'm going to be making a push to get at least 150 Patreon supporters. And any details about that, the reasons and everything, are posted in the group. All right, it's a long paragraph with the reasons, and I think that it's very. I think I even put it out there: 6.66 cents a day. If you want to just get in at the $2 level, which is perfectly fine with me. And I'm going to be continuing to push this till we reach our goal, which is 150 to 160 Patreon supporters by the end of the year. In it, we have 3,500 people in the group. So if you are watching now, I would ask you to consider becoming a Patreon supporter. Anybody who is already in there, and there's 80 some people now, will tell you it's well worth it. It's as good at $2 a month. It's as good a deal is out there regarding Patreon. Some places you give them $2, you don't get anything, but you get a book and you get all-time access to the private blog, which I think some people have told me is the best deal because of what I do, and I talk about a lot more in-depth explanation about a case, just from a theoretical point of view and from a practical point of view, and how it might go about being solved. Those things that I don't get into the episode because, once again, I don't like offering opinions on the episodes. I want people to be free thinkers. Whereas in the blog, in the private blog, I do a lot of opinions and look at from different angles. And some people have called it like a missing persons class for $2 a month. And I'm writing like at least over 2,000 words every Friday. That's 8,000 words, 8,000 words a month for $2. And you're not going to get this kind of thing. And nobody else is doing what I'm doing on that blog. Nobody. So you might consider it for $2 a month. Sue, that does answer your question. Great. You're welcome. Thank you. It's a fantastic question. I'm glad. And anytime I can talk about my friend Megan Good, I love it. Becky, I donated this week. Excited to get my book. Becky, I'm going to work on that. Yes. It just takes me a while to put the book, once people sign up and everything, it takes me a while to get the ebooks ready and everything because I want to personalize them. And you should know, if you get an ebook from signing up to Patreon, you get a special message from me at the beginning of it. So there's that. And Becky, thank you. Thank you so much. And Cherie says, and you're helping these families with awareness. Trying to do it. Jimmy, what's going on? Carrie, heck yeah, I've taken some really good notes off your site and Patreon site as well. Carrie, you're more than welcome to. You're welcome. And Christina says, I hope law enforcement pays attention. They drop the ball pretty often. Sometimes they do, Christina. That's true. Cherie says, the more these cases are talked about, the more aware people are and the greater chances of leads. Yeah. I mean, just look at how, just look what happened in the Brewer Braden case just within the last few days. Just covering it, people come out of the woodwork. They want to talk about it. They want to talk about a videotape. The person that allegedly saw these two guys last wants to contact me and talk about it. And then I can talk to Laura and everything. This is the way it's supposed to work. When I talk about Unfound moving cases ahead, this is what I mean. It's definitely what I mean. Jimmy says, just got in time to get in. Well, you missed quite a bit, Jimmy, but we got a ways to go. This program tonight's going to go over an hour. It just is. So I just talked about Patreon. I would appreciate it if you are watching. We got quite a few people in here tonight. If you're on a Patreon supporter, I deeply appreciate it. It's going to be well worth it. News. Got to talk about news today. Just national news. The Ohio murders. It looks like that case has been solved. These 8 people, both adults and younger people that were murdered back in 2016 in Ohio, have to talk about this. And then we're going to get to Zoe Campos and some other things as well. 4 people, I take that back. 6 people have been indicted for the murders. And I'm guessing it's pretty much who we thought. Their names are Angela Wagner, George Billy Wagner, George Wagner IV, Jake Wagner, and then the mothers of both parents, the mothers of Angela and George. It is alleged that these 4, the 4 I named, yes, including the woman, you women can pull triggers too, they went over there and killed all these people in the Roden family. And if you can believe it, now this was all, these Wagners were the people who, not long after this happened, even though they knew the Rodens, they moved to Alaska. Well, they are now back in Ohio, and of course they are now being indicted. They're behind bars. I don't know if there's bail or whatever. But this seems to have all been done over the custody of a child. That I think it was Jake Wagner had a child with Hannah Roden, who was murdered, although their little one was not, was left untouched that night of the murder, even though the child was there. And if you'll remember, this was a shooting that occurred at 3 different houses, and you'll remember that there was the idea that it had to do with marijuana, because the Rodens were into growing marijuana. They had marijuana, and I don't know how big of an operation it was, but it sounds like it was decently sized, and marijuana is illegal in Ohio. So some people were thinking, well, it might have been some Mexicans who came up, and I just never bought into any of that. It just didn't. Once again, just going along with what I know about disappearance cases. As you know, I don't try to get tricky with it like I think a lot of other hosts do and get to conspiracies and things. I'm trying to solve things, so I just try to go with the simplest explanation there can be. And this definitely seemed to me like something that was personal, because it's obvious to me that whoever did this knew the layout of these homes, knew that they could get in, do these things, which means these people had probably been to these houses many times before. And it also had to have been done by a multitude of people, more than one person, more than 2 people. And now we know that it was 4 people. So it kind of just fits into kind of what I expected. And then when I heard about the Wagners and there was this custody thing that did come out a long time ago, I'm thinking, well, they probably did it. It's just going to try to figure out how to actually prove it. And we'll see. We'll see what kind of evidence they have. These people are innocent until proven guilty, but it doesn't surprise me that these six, are the ones who have been indicted. And it doesn't surprise me that this is over custody. What do I keep saying? Relationships are the number one motivator of disappearances and murders. As much as we talk about drugs and money and other things in all of these episodes, what do we talk about most? Relationships. Ex-husbands, ex-wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, etc. Cheating on people, custody battles, divorce. And it's safe to say, as soon as you go from being single to being in a relationship, your odds of disappearing or being murdered go up. That's what it says. And Cherie says a male's joining. There's some other males in here right now, Cherie. There's Jimmy, yeah. And Dan, there's another guy. We're hanging tough, guys. Carrie says, such a sickening event. I couldn't even finish reading the article talking about this Ohio. Cherie says, I never thought it was a custody battle. I'm usually pretty good with these things. Custody battles get really ugly, says Carrie. Drugs is probably the number 2 reason, Christina says. That could be true, Christina. Very well could be. So I have to say that, I also have to say, and this is how I feel once again. You want to draw another correlation like the Jennifer Kessie case. What do a lot of people think? Well, the landscapers did it. These Mexicans or Hispanics that were there, and they're illegal, and they were the ones that had to have done something to Jennifer Kessie. To me, it seems like a little bit of profiling to me, because white people, more than anybody else in this country, cause more of the problems and crimes and everything else than any other group. Why? Because there's more of us than anybody else. So odds are is that a regular white guy or white woman, waspy, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, Western European, is going to be responsible for a disappearance or a murder. So I also lean on that. And so when it said, the group of gang of Mexicans came up there because the rodents screwed them into deal and everything, I just never bought into that at all. Just never. I'm not going to read that, Sherry. Sherry says they waited till a couple days after she delivered the baby. It's just something. Just bad. But never underestimate family squabbles. Never do that. Never do that. And of course, the case that I always bring up here in Florida is the just escaped my mind now. The Florida State law professor who got murdered in his driveway that went unsolved for like a year and a half. That was something that I want to say Daniel Braden, but it's not. That's not. His name's Daniel. So I can't think of it right now. But it turns out that his ex-wife's family had him murdered just so she and the kids could move from the Panhandle, Florida, back down to Miami. You can look that case up. Forget his name now. That's embarrassing. But so as long as I remember cases like that, and they shot him in his own driveway in broad daylight. So look up that case if you haven't heard about it. Look it up. Florida State law professor murdered. I think the year was 2014. I think it was July 2014. So there's the murders. Just wondered, you had to think with all of the people murdered and all the evidence and things they would have had that it was eventually going to get solved. I will say, though, I thought that they would have solved it a little quicker. But it seems to me that they have good suspects, and we'll just have to see what the evidence is. I'm sure there are many, many things about this case that people don't know about. I'm going to say for sure. Okay, let's move on to something else. Zoe Campos. A lot of things going on in the Zoe Campos case within the last few days, and I've been trying to keep up on it. And I posted some pictures and things. Found out, I guess this maybe the end of last week, that there was some digging going on at a house, and somehow this house is connected to the disappearance of Zoe Campos. And I want you to know that I have been in contact with her mother, Melinda. It seems to me that maybe this is the house where Carlos lived, but I have to say I'm not convinced of that. For a couple different reasons. If you want to know, the place that they were digging at and where they found this bone allegedly is allegedly at 1918 70th Street, Lubbock, Texas. And you can do a satellite view, a ground view. But I actually thought that it was not that house. For some reason, I thought it was another house on 70th Street, but east of there. Just a few houses, maybe 3 or 4 houses to the east on the same side of the street. And it was at 19, maybe it was 1912, maybe? I have to think about that. Maybe 1908, 1912. But the picture that they showed of the outside of the front of the house from the street view is actually 1918 70th Street, allegedly where they're digging. But I'm just wondering if that's meant to throw people off by posting that picture. So I don't know. But they allegedly found they were digging, and we'll see what happens. In addition, today I was watching this video of Lubbock has mounted police on horseback, and they were going through a large field, several acres beside the highway. So what the house is to the west of Lowry Field, and remember Lowry Field from both the Disappeared episode and my interview I did with Melinda. The house is to the west, I'm going to say a quarter mile from Lowry Field. Well, where the horses were today is like a quarter mile, half mile to the east of Lowry Field. Now, I watched that video for a while. To me, it just looked like a bunch of guys, or there maybe some women there too, just riding the horses around in that field. It didn't look to me like they saw anything. Didn't look like they found anything. They got off their horses a couple times, but it seemed like they were just standing around, just kind of walking around, and they'd take the horses out to the edge and then go back in. It didn't seem to me like that. I don't know. But allegedly, it's connected to Zoe's case. There are just some issues, and I told Melinda this, and I don't think that I'm out of line saying this. I have some serious doubts about all this. If you read the article, the woman who lives in that house now says that the police have actually been to that house before. I don't know how recently, but she says they've been there before. And I don't think that I think that she's lived in that house since about 2016. So maybe 3 years after Zoe disappeared. And if this is the house where Carlos was, if you remember, Carlos lived there with his parents. He was not an old guy. He was still living at home. So are we really to believe that he did something to Zoe and then put her in the backyard and did something and nobody else noticed that? Moreover, the police, found out about him. Are you telling me they went over to his house, didn't look in? Wouldn't they have noticed something going on in the backyard? Maybe they can go back there. I don't know. And on top of that, when they say, well, we found a bone. Well, to me, it doesn't seem like they're doing any more. Been doing any more digging since then. So if they thought it was a human bone, would they not keep digging? I could be totally wrong about it. It could be tomorrow that it's a woman's body and everything else. And and that would be both, maybe fortunate and unfortunate. I don't know how to even judge that. But there's just get the feeling of it that I don't think they're going to find anything. I think that if it's going to be a bone of like somebody who lived, I mean, that house has been there. I looked since 1963. Is it possible somebody buried their dog in the backyard or their cat in the backyard? And a cat would be a little smaller, but a bigger dog in the backyard years and years and years and years ago. That house is 55 years old. So there's just some things there, the way the stories are worded and what's going on, that I have my doubts. Melinda hasn't told me anything. Even if I really don't feel like I'm withholding anything from you. She and I have talked, but it really hasn't been any substantial talk. I just get the feeling that she's all in the dark about all of this. That she's finding out on the news like the rest of us, which is horrible. So that also leads me to believe maybe this isn't totally something that maybe the police are just poking around. I don't know. Let's see what all of you have to say. Cherie says, I never thought Carlos was responsible. I have my doubts too. Bobby Walker, what's going on tonight? Good to see you. That's okay that you're late. No problem at all. Jerry asks, you don't think it's Zoe? Jerry, I don't. I just feel I could be totally wrong. And if I'm wrong and a week from now I have to own up to it, I could do that. I got no problem with that. It just feels to me like if there was really a body in the backyard, would they really be on these horses like a mile away looking through this other field that also has to do with Zoe's case? I don't know. Christina says, Cherie, something Zoe's mom said about the older guy that was a friend of the family really got my attention. I'm going to re-listen to the case. Yeah, Christina, his name is Ben Flores, and he was talking to Zoe for a half an hour on the phone that night that she disappeared. Yeah, I know. Carrie says that whole yard would have been turned over. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, Carrie. If they found a bone and they really thought it was a human, I mean, they'd have tape up, they'd kick the person out, they'd be doing, because it'd be allegedly a crime scene, and it just doesn't feel like that is happening. Sarah, good to see you tonight. I hope you're doing well. Cherie says, I believe what happened happened in the motel apartment, and Ben wasn't directly involved, but does know what happened. Yeah. Carrie says, even if it's nothing, it brings case back to the media again. Yeah, I think that's good, Carrie. I can't argue with that. But on the other hand, it does get the hopes of Melinda up. And you would think that any of this got out, the police would let her know. You'd think that they'd let her know, hey, just want you to know, we're going over to this house. We're going to be digging around. We got a lead. But we don't know what's going on. If you see anything about the media, don't believe them. We're working on it. Nothing like that, at least to my knowledge, and I think she would have told me. So I think they're just signs of, I would compare it to like, what other case can I think of? Like when they went down for Thomas Brown's case this past summer, in late July, and the private investigator there was the attorney general. They were poking around. They were doing this. They were doing that. We're 6 months later, and nothing's come of it. So, I don't know what to think. I do have my doubts. But to Jerry, you just point blank asked me before, you don't think it's Zoe? No, I don't. But you should know that we know about Jennifer Wilkerson, who disappeared in Lubbock. But in that article that I posted, and there were a couple, the police did distinctly say that it had to do with a 2013 missing persons case. Well, there's only 2 in Lubbock that year. Zoe and this other young woman who it turned out that some guy ended up driving her car around, and she's not, of course, not been found either. But the belief was that it's Zoe's case because of that area, and of course Lowry Field, and that's where her phone last pinged around in that area. So there you go. Jamie, what's going on tonight? Thanks for tuning in. So there's that regarding Zoe Campos. But she's, Melinda, like I said, is kind of in the dark, which is horrible. I need to talk also about another case. A little bit of a development, and I can't go into everything, but I will tell you this. So I was in bed on Friday night, and my phone dings, and I could tell it was the ding of an email coming into the Unfound podcast at Gmail account. So I said, well, that's interesting. So I look at it, and I'm not going to tell you who sent it, but a lawyer in the state of Arkansas sent it. Lawyer, I've never heard of this person before. I've never, to my knowledge, had any contact with this person. Nothing. And there were no words in the email. There was only an attachment. And it was the record of Travis Robertson. It had, and once again, this is public material. This is not, I think you can actually go to the Arkansas Judicial Court site and eventually pull this up. But I don't know if this lawyer is a listener. I don't know. I emailed the lawyer back. This person hasn't gotten back to me. I don't know what to tell you. But I did forward this attachment on to Sonia, of course, Travis's sister, who was my guest for that episode. What has to do with Travis, and we talked about Travis in late 2000, what year was it now? I'm blanking. 2008. Got in trouble with drugs, and then he was supposed to appear in court. And then, of course, he disappeared on February 28th, and his court date was in March, and he'd show up. And that's all documented on this official sheet that was sent to me. Now you're saying, well, what's the big deal about that? We all knew about that. Well, what's interesting is that the final entry on that is from 2013. Yes, 5 years after Travis disappeared. And the entry on this has to do with some lawyer out there, the way I'm trying to understand this. Some lawyer filed something having to do with Travis Robertson that my belief is if Travis should ever happen to show up alive in Arkansas again, that he is going to be asked to be compelled to reveal the identity of a confidential informant. That's the way I read it. I'm still trying to get good legal advice on what it all means, but it does have to do with a confidential informant topic of some type. Once again, 5 years after Travis disappeared. Sonia doesn't know what to make of it. She has all the information. She has the name of the lawyer. I told her to go to this law office there, talk to this person, see why this person emailed it to me at 1 in the morning on a Saturday, like Friday, Saturday. Because Sonia needs to get to the bottom of this because she really didn't understand it, and I didn't totally understand it either. Now, this, of course, the reason it's important because it's kind of weird for somebody to show up in court documents 5 years after they've disappeared. That's weird. But also because if you'll go back and listen to that episode, we talked about confidential informants. Is it possible that Travis was a confidential informant? Was he working for the police? This alleged meeting that he ran into somebody in that bar, once again, go back and listen to the episode. Could that have been his police handler? Maybe. And of course, he disappeared right after that. So this is bringing that kind of to the forefront again. Was Travis doing something on the side, helping the police out? And of course, he had this guy that he was working for, and that guy, forget his name, but was Travis informing on him, or was there some other person who was a confidential informant that knew something about Travis? This official piece of paperwork in Arkansas now backs up the idea that something in this case, and Travis Robertson and everything, there was a confidential informant involved. This proves it. So, and Cherie says, which is what Sonia was saying. Yeah, I know. But still, when Sonia gave the information to Sonia, I think she was a little stunned, a little amazed. But she's going to be working on it, and I hope she'll get back to me with whatever she finds. And if I can talk to you about it, I will. Tinka, you are definitely new. I would remember if there was ever a Tinka in this live show before. Tinka, welcome. Great to see you. So there's that. So, I mean, we got stuff going on with the case we just covered. Jansen Brewer, Daniel Braden, Zoe Campos, Travis Robertson. This is what we're trying to do. This is what Unfound is trying to do. Make everybody aware, moving these cases forward. Can't say I'm doing much maybe in the Zoe case, but definitely the case that was just covered. And then with just some lawyer out of the woodwork sending me something, this is what we're always hoping for. Every case we do, this is what we're hoping for. And I don't know if other podcasts on a weekly basis are having these happen. I don't know. You'd know more about that. But it does feel unique. And it feels really good. Cheryl asks, do you dream about these cases? I don't. No, I don't think, I'm a pretty vivid dreamer. And ever watched the movie Inception, where they talk about being a dream within a dream and stuff? I do that. I will be dreaming within a dream. I'll be sleeping in my dream. I'll wake up and I'm still, I'm in another dream. I do that. Really, I mean, all the time. But I don't ever see any of my the cases I covered, those missing people. I never see them in my dreams, not that I remember. Like everybody else, I think all of our dreams are weird. It's it's really nothing it seems to make sense when you're in there, but then you wake up and it's like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. So, but I don't dream about any of the cases. Not that I ever remember that show. It's an interesting question, but I'm a very vivid dreamer. Carrie says, making cases moves hard. Great job. Thanks. Oh, Christina's getting out of here. Bye all. Stay safe, Ed. Christine, I'm going to do that. Thank you. Thank you for watching tonight. All right, let's get to this Friday's case. So we talked about these other unfound cases from the past. Now we're going to talk about the future. The disappearance of Robert Cox. This is a disappearance that happened in, speaking of Arkansas, I've done a lot of Arkansas cases. Havana, Arkansas on February 19th, 2011. So we'll be coming up on the 8th anniversary in a few months. The title of this episode is A Clear-Cut Mystery. And there's reasons for that. First of all, Robert Cox was a 57-year-old who had been having some mental difficulties, had been on antidepressants, was hallucinating, had anxiety for a long time. But then within the 6 months before he disappeared, he also started having some physical issues. His head dropped. He couldn't pick his head up off his chin. He was shuffling. He couldn't talk. He could barely eat by himself. I think his brain was okay, but he couldn't communicate. He was nonverbal, couldn't communicate it. As you will hear, I talked to his sister Lydia for this episode. Couldn't communicate with a pencil and a piece of paper, but he still had his mind. He could still walk around, but he shuffled and everything else. On a Saturday, one day, he allegedly just walked out of his house and never came back. Now, the weird part about this is that his wife claims, her name is Vicky, that she saw him and the piece of land next to their house. She saw him, and he was in what was called a clear-cut area, which is an area where a bunch of trees have been cut down, but it hasn't all been, made neat yet. So there's mud holes, there's roots sticking out. It would be very difficult for even an adult of average physical ability to get through there. Where she says, here he is, all he can do is shuffle and everything, and she says that she sees him out there on the clear cut. Somehow he got over there. Well, she claims that when she got in her car and drove over to get him, he was gone. And he's never been seen again. And so, once again, this episode is called A Clear-Cut Mystery. But, of course, the other reason is that, of course, clear-cut means what? Concise, very clear. Clear-cut, of course. Very denoted. It's easy to understand. And I think that what you're going to see in this case is there are some clear-cut problems with the events of that day. Because as you can imagine, searchers came in, found nothing. And this was a guy who could barely get in and out of a car by himself. And so he walked off, never came back. I interviewed, once again, the interview for this episode is his sister Lydia, who at the time lived about 2 miles away. She showed up at her brother's house shortly after he went out. She was on she has a horse that she was on, going all over looking for him. Her husband was on an ATV. They got the neighbors involved. Eventually, a guy went up in like a private plane, like a propeller plane, like a Cessna. They brought helicopters in, eventually with like night vision, everything. Nothing. Never seen again. So that is this Friday's case. It's a long episode. The interview is kind of long because I thought it was important that we go through the physical issues that Robert was having so all of you can understand it. And then Lydia was very precise and very complete and thorough about that day, about everybody that showed up and the timing of everything and what has gone on since. So it's going to be a long episode. It's like it's going to be 2.5 hours, something like that. So let's just see what Carrie says, I couldn't imagine being trapped in a body that doesn't work well, but fully functioning mind. Yeah. Cherie says she's lying. You can judge that for yourself come Friday. We tried to just present the facts, but Lydia does have an opinion about what happened, as you will hear. And so that is Friday's case. The disappearance of Robert Wayne Cox from Havana, Arkansas on February 19th, 2011. And the episode is called A Clear-Cut Mystery. And once again, the interview is with his sister, Lydia Carter. Maybe one more thing before I leave you all tonight. And like I said, we're going over. It's a long one tonight. I posted that article in the discussion group from Vox. Profiling doesn't work. Yep. Who knew? And this is why I really dislike true crime fiction shows, because they do play off the profiling angle. Well, we can figure out that he was this and this and this. It's all BS. It is all BS. And in fact, in real life, it's kind of a pseudoscience. And once again, maybe it's just from my experience of the last 2 years, you find out very quickly that a lot of these things that are supposed to be so well-known and popular and successful and everything, they're not. So I hope that you will read that article about how profiling is somewhat of a pseudoscience and how they shouldn't be using it on TV shows because it misleads people. I totally agree. You can once again find that in the podcast discussion, the Unfound podcast discussion group. So that's it. What'd we do? We talked about me talking to Detective Kenneth Maines today for about a half hour. Great to talk to him. Talked about the conversation with Scotty Hughes. It's posted in the group. Reminder, we're going to YouTube in January. I'm going to be doing some filming that I will post on YouTube about me doing a presentation. Talked about the Brewer-Braden poll, where Daniel did something to Jansen and took off, was the winner. Talked about Patreon, $2 a month, 6.67 cents per day. Would love to have you supporting the program. We're trying to get to at least 150 Patreon members before the end of the year. Why do I mention Charlie Project by Sue? I thought that was a great question. And the news, the Ohio murders, they've indicted people, charged people with the murders. It was the Wagner family. The article on Vox about profiling. Zoe Campos, what's going on there? Travis Robertson, that email that I received last Friday night / Saturday morning. And then I talked about this Friday's case, the disappearance of Robert Cox, a clear-cut mystery, happened February 19th, 2011 in Havana, Arkansas. The guest is his sister, Lydia Carter. Also need to mention, of course, the shirts at myshopify.com. Got the books that, of course, if you're a Patreon member, you get some of those books, ebooks, automatically. The playing cards at makeplayingcards.com. Also have a PayPal account. A listener was very, very generous yesterday with a PayPal contribution. I cannot thank him enough. If you just want to do a one-time donation, you can do it at PayPal, and that would be unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. So there you go with that. That's all I got. I'm going to go. Hour and 17 minutes. That's a pretty good program. Bobby says, hope to be talking to you again soon. Bobby, that would be fantastic. Cherie, thanks. Pamela, how did I miss that? I don't know what you missed, Pamela, but you can watch it again. And I'm going to go. My favorite time of the week, every week. And I hope you all have a great night. For those of you in the north, stay warm. Down here, it was a beautiful day. Not to rub it in. Good night.